Well, welcome everyone. My name is Dana White. Welcome to the Myth Salon. It's so appropriate that we would be having a Myth Salon devoted to the mythologium and community, because as we were setting up, we've done a lot of these, and I pretty much think I have it down. And Dennis and I were on the setup procedure, and he wasn't hearing my sound. And so we tried a variety of things, and it's sort of like two guys in a kitchen trying to kind of work out and figure out where the things are supposed to be. And Joanna came on. She said, "Well, have you checked your settings on your microphone? You're using an external microphone." I said, "Sure." And I thought I was. And at first I had my own answer for it. And then I went to the audio settings, and well, what do you know? I clicked on the little thing, and up it came, up the sound came. I guess my point is that when we live in a kind of like the insular solidarity of our own psyche and our own experience and our own expertise, we kind of become immune to the whole spirit of community, because we get cut off. We think we know what we're doing, but in reality, we don't. And we don't avail ourselves to one another. And it's sort of within that mind that I would like to open today's Myth Salon with a beautiful poem by Rumi. It's called "A Community of the Spirit." There is a community of the spirit. Join it. Feel the delight of walking in the noisy street and being the noise. Drink all your passions and be a disgrace. Close both your eyes to see with the other eye. Open your hands if you want to be held. Sit down in the circle. Quit acting like a wolf. Feel the shepherd's love filling you. At night, your beloved wanders. Don't accept consolations. Close your mouth against food. Taste your lover's mouth in yours. You moan, "She left me." Be empty of worrying. 20 more will come. Think of who created the thought. Why stay in prison when the door hangs wide open? Move outside the tangle of fear thinking. Live in silence. Flow down and down and down into ever-widening rings of being. The depth of Rumi's wisdom never ceases to amaze me, and the appropriateness that reaches across the ages. He's wandering around from Afghanistan to Turkey in a world without lights, and the whole world is illuminated by every thought, every connection that he has. It's beautiful. It's just beautiful. So in the spirit of opening and invoking community, let's have a moment of silence. Today, we're going to do something a little different. A lot of times we have presentations, we have introductions, Will takes over, he introduces everybody and he brings everybody in. I'd like to allow people to have their own voice today and speak for themselves about who they are. Maybe we could start with one of my favorite people in the whole Pacifica community, Dianne Travis-Teague. I met her years ago when we were in our house in Santa Monica. She came over one afternoon, and I said, "Who's this person? You're going to come in here and talk to us about community." And she has just fulfilled the sense of community in a way that I don't know. I was sort of skeptical at the beginning. I said, well, we have all these community gatherings at my house. And she said, oh, you do? And you did? And we had all of these. And sad to say, moving to Santa Cruz, they're a thing of the past. We won't be having those in Santa Monica. And we might have more, but we're not sure where they're going to be. But Dianne, tell us a little bit about community.
Thank you, Dana. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dianne Travis-Teague, the Senior Director of the Office of Alumni Relations at Pacifica. And if we haven't met, I'm sure that we will meet. And I believe that Dana has fairly introduced me and shared my feelings that Pacifica is a part of the greater community, not only here in Santa Barbara, but throughout the country and throughout the world. It is our hope, our goal, to make this even more true in the year going ahead. And we invite you, as COVID has receded, to come home to Pacifica at your earliest convenience. There's lots of excitement. The Mythologium is coming up at our Lambert Lane campus, and we invite you to join us. At Lambert, at Moderator, you always have a home. Thank you.
Go for it, Will.
Yeah, sure. I'll just say, first of all, Dianne, Selina, Dennis, Stephanie, Joanna, Vanessa, it's great to see all of you. And it strikes me that I think I've been in a community with all of you in some community or another, whether it's the Pacifica Alumni Association, the Joseph Campbell Foundation, Pacifica's Mythological Graduate Institute program, and of course this Myth Salon. And I think Selina even got to cross over with some of my community through the radio station at the Santa Barbara News Press. So it's really cool. And one of my strong feelings about community is that it functions like a culture. So as many crossovers as you can get, you're creating culture, creating community, not through some type of, world conquest of one single community. Community comes with community on top of community on top of community, and overlap on overlap on overlap. So it's amazing to be here with you. And as I was mentioning before we started, this happens to be the perfect context for me. This is I just arrived moments ago at my family reunion. I've been doing this every year for my entire life until my grandfather died 5 years ago. And this is our first time creating community again together tonight. We just finished dinner. And so now I'm with you guys. So it's very much community energy for me in this evening. As we go around the rest of the room, I hope that each of you can maybe just say a little bit about the mythology communities you're a part of and that you're in. I'm so excited to go and participate in the Mythologium next at the end of this month. But as you guys introduce yourselves, I hope you'll highlight mythological communities that you're interested in or participate in that others listening might find compelling. And I'll keep it simple so that you guys don't wonder who's next. Dennis, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself? And I'll just go in the order of my screen.
Thanks, Will. Hi, everybody. And I'm so happy to be part of this community. I think I've been a Myth Salon panelist well before COVID. So I've got a bit of a track record, and this is a part of a community that I've always enjoyed. And I love seeing some of my myth students and other programs that I've taught in being so successful in taking the work that we faculty laid out and pushing it forward and deeper. I hold the rank of Distinguished Professor Emeritus at Pacifica. I've been connected with the school for 27 years, and it's been the best job I've ever had because of the sense of community that it fosters. I've authored, co-authored, edited, or co-edited 33 volumes. And writing for me is a way of connecting to larger and larger communities. So I see that the isolated act of writing is really a community endeavor. And that's why I keep doing it. Thank you.
And so great to see everyone today. I think so my name's Joanna Gardner, and I think of myself as a writer, a mythologist, and a magical realist. And I first found the myth community at Pacifica, right, as a student. And I couldn't believe it. It was like this revelation to me that such things existed as these groups of people who would get together and talk about myth. How had I gone that long in my life without experiencing this. And as a result, when my coursework was ending and we were leaving people like Dennis and all the amazing classes, Stephanie and I were thinking, we have to continue this. We can't just like let this stop. We have to keep having these conversations. And so that's what led us to organizing the Mythologium that first year. And we'll talk more about the Mythologium later. But so Pacifica coursework is how I found the myth community. And then kind of after that moved into this Mythologium community. These days I'm at the Joseph Campbell Foundation. I'm the director of marketing and communications, very much interested in building that community. And I'm doing some adjunct teaching back at Pacifica. So rejoining the community again, much to my delight. I'm a newcomer, I'll say, to the Myth Salon, but very grateful to be here with this community. I think one of the important aspects of community is how we grow stronger when we come together and our ideas grow stronger, right? When we bring our ideas together, we lift them all up. And we look at them and we say, wow, look at these amazing ideas. And each of us chooses the ideas that are the strongest and most beautiful for us to work with in our own work.
Yeah, it's wonderful to be here with all of you this evening. My name is Stephanie Zajchowski. I too went to Pacifica Graduate Institute and went into that magical world of myth. I am also a co-founder and co-organizer of the Mythologium, which we'll be discussing here tonight. And I'm also on the board of directors of the Alumni Association at Pacifica. So I work with Dianne quite a bit, and that's certainly a community as well. And I am the operations coordinator at the Joseph Campbell Foundation. So these are all communities I'm loving to be involved in. And I think community for me is such an interesting idea. I think communities are where we feel held. We don't feel quite so alone. I know really trying to find myth in this way, trying to find Pacifica, it was like a diamond out in the middle of nowhere. And so it's like, once I found it, I was like, oh my goodness, like someone speaks my language. And so nurturing these communities where we can come together and have these conversations where people understand what myth is and how it moves and what it does, and also build connections. I think my community for me has been support system for me continually. I wouldn't be where I am today without it. So I am grateful for that community and loving connecting with others and supporting them as well.
I'm a clinical depth psychologist. Dennis was my incredible advisor. And then I met Dana, and I was part of, and Will, and I was part of the first 2 years of the virtual Myth Salon as a panelist. And then, you know, Will, you introduced me to Richard Dugan, and I did a couple shows with that. And what I realized with that is I need to go on my own. And so I just took the bull by the horns and started my own podcast, Soul Transformation, which is a brand that comes directly from my soul. People ask me, why did you call it that? I was branded in a humanist experience. And so that is me. And I just trademarked it 15 or 18 years ago, and I'm just going with it. So now I just, in my podcast, I have conversations with some of the most brilliant minds in the country in the areas of psychology, mythology, spirituality, and I'm really into holistic principles as well. So I kind of put that in, and that's my psycho-spiritual lane, and that's what I'm doing. And it's been an incredible learning curve, but it's community that actually grew me to go on my own. And I need to really honor you, Dana and Will, because you really, because of the community that you held for me, it allowed me to take off on my own.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing that, Selina.
Thanks.
The individual success that comes from community, as Dennis was talking about earlier, is so rewarding and profound. Thank you for telling me that, Selina. And Vanessa, you're the last on the screen, and you actually participated in that community. Would love to hear from you too, and then we'll kick it off.
Yeah, well, I'll start off by saying that it's just nice to see everyone and just to put faces to the words So like Stephanie and Joanna, it's just nice to see your faces. I know we've been exchanging a lot of emails, and just everyone else's faces. It's just nice to see and just feel the connection. So I'm a PhD candidate from Pacifica Graduate Institute. I will say that for me, there's been a lot of synchronicity with like the myth community, because I'm not a candidate from that department, not from the myth department, but actually from the therapy and healing practices. So it's been really interesting just to see myself, allowing myself to open up to like other communities. And I've learned a lot. And I feel like just myth itself seems to like follow me or get my attention. I will be presenting for the very first time. It's my first conference. Well, I will be presenting. So I'm really excited, and I get chills as I share this, because I always told myself that when I do, that I would love if it's in resonance to the heart. So I feel that the heart was what actually brought me forth to submit my proposal. So I'm really excited about that. And then the Myth Salon, I think that's where it all kind of started for me when it comes to myth itself. Several years ago, actually, there's a part of me that wants to say, oh, 2-3 years ago, but I'm like, no, it's been a lot longer than that. That's where I joined. And quite frankly, I didn't join every weekly. It wasn't something where I saw myself there every week. So it's just interesting to me just to see Will, to see Dana, and to see other familiar faces, where I feel like the myth, like just itself, the community, it feels like it's always been around, even though I don't feel that I have participated as much. So there's something in itself, that alone, that speaks to me deeply. So I'm just really excited to be here.
Awesome. Thanks, Vanessa. Gosh, I think we have been doing it for 8 years now. So it's, yeah. Okay, so that's everybody. And I think now I'm going to hand it over to Joanna and Stephanie to introduce us to our conversation around community tonight.
Thank you, Will. So our focus tonight is going to be the mythologium, as Dana described in the email. I have a few slides that I'd like to share, and I'll tell you a little bit about how the mythologium came into existence and what the plan is for this year. As I go along, feel free to, put any questions that you have into the Q&A, and I think Dana will have time for Q&A later on, right? Yeah. So any questions that come up, put them into the Q&A. I'll cover as much as I can in the slides, and we will right now see how the trickster cooperates with the slide share process. Here we go, everyone. So Stephanie and I are here tonight to talk about the Mythologium, which is a myth conference that the two of us started exactly 5 years ago at this point. Actually, 4 years ago, because this coming up is our 5th Mythologium. So just building a little bit on the introductions that we gave a little bit earlier, Stephanie is the operations coordinator at the Joseph Campbell Foundation, serves on the board of directors for both the Jung Society of Austin and PGIAA. And you can learn more about Stephanie's work at her website, which is here on the slide, stephaniezajchowski.com. And similar for me, I am the marketing and communications director at JCF and serving on PGI's faculty as an adjunct professor in the myth department. So what is a mythologium? A mythologium is a made-up word that means an annual conference for mythologists and friends of myth. It's not like you have to have some sort of ID card as a mythologist in order to come to the Mythologium. Anyone who feels that call to myth is more than welcome. At the Mythologium, mythologists present their latest research in panels, much like academic conferences, right? So a panel might have 2 or 3 or maybe 4 presenters on it. And traditionally, each panelist would give a 20-minute presentation, one after the other, and then there would be a Q&A, right, at a normal academic conference. At the Mythologium, it's a little bit different. We do have panels, but we also build in poetry and writing reflections to kind of foster a depth experience and to let us really absorb what we're hearing before racing off to the next panel, like sometimes happens. Also, instead of Q&A sessions at the end of panels at the Mythologium, we have what we call yes and discussions in the tradition of improv theater, right? Where the actors can't say no but to what comes before, because that kind of stops the action on the stage and nobody knows what to do. When something happens in improv, the actors have to say yes and then carry the action forward. And we use that same approach with the ideas that come up in our conversations on panels. So someone might offer an idea and we say, yes, that idea exists, and it suggests this other idea as well. Or yes, that idea exists, and look, so does its opposite. Both ideas exist, both at the same time, the opposites. And so again, like I said earlier, really trusting the community to listen and choose the ideas that are the most beautiful for them to take away and work with in their own work. When we get together in person, which doesn't always happen thanks to the pandemic, we have meals together and happy hour so that we can increase the strength of our connections. And this last bullet is really kind of the vision of the Mythologium. We share ideas, we inspire each other, and we amplify each other's work. That has been our vision since day one. It's the flag we fly, and every year that has been our North Star, so to speak. So why organize a myth conference, right? There's lots of things one could do with one's time. Why go to all the bother to organize a myth conference? We've sort of touched on some of these ideas already in our intros, I think. But first and foremost, Stephanie and I wanted to cultivate the community of mythologists. You know, we wanted to carry those community connections forward that we discovered among our classmates in school. In so doing, a myth conference, like I said earlier, fosters new ideas, right? New ideas, new friendships that lead to new ideas, etc. It's also useful, we felt, to create deadlines to help people finish their work, right? Sometimes having a deadline is what actually makes us get work done that wouldn't get done otherwise. And not only do we finish our work when we have a deadline, but we share it. We get it out there and we can talk about it, and people can reflect on it, and their reflections can make us reflect, and then the ideas grow stronger. We also wanted to advance the careers of individual mythologists and advance the field, right? Mythological studies is a field of study, and having a gathering really, it's not just individuals that it helps, but, and you know, the field is slightly different than the community. The community is kind of the people, right? And the field is the body of knowledge. And so advancing that body of knowledge in the world. And probably the most important item on this slide is the last one. Mythologists want to have parties just as much as anyone does. And so when one organizes a conference, one can build in fun things. So this slide kind of shows the history of the Mythologium. We started in 2019. It was an in-person event. We had, I think, Steph, we had like 30 people there.
Yeah.
Yeah, 30. And, you know, we didn't know if it would work at all. We said we wanted to do a conference. And so we put the word out on social media and started emailing people. And lo and behold, people submitted papers and they came and they presented, and it was amazing. It was wonderful. And even with 30 people in that room, the Mythologium magic happened. You know, there was this like quickening when the ideas became bigger than any individual, I will say. And it was great. So we decided to do it again, except, guess what happened? 2020 happened. And so like the rest of the world, we had to pivot to Zoom, which we did. And that was the first year we had a theme. Our theme that year was myth and cinema. And it was fascinating to see how bringing people together to all think about the same topic moved that topic forward. It was amazing. In 2021, the pandemic was still going on, so we stayed on Zoom. And that year, we really felt like it was important for us as individuals and as a community to think about healing, right? Like how does healing show up in myth? What are images of healing? And I remember, I'll never forget, actually, Dennis gave the keynote speech that year, and it was incredible. And it was what I remain so grateful for is how healing it was for what he shared and for what everyone experienced. And I was just amazed. I was like, oh my goodness, thinking about healing actually makes it happen. So thank you to Dennis. In 2022, we wanted to do a hybrid event, but we couldn't afford it. We work on a shoestring, and so we couldn't afford a hybrid event. So we stayed on Zoom. Our theme was myth and ecological consciousness, and had a great conference. And this year, 2023, thanks to one person who luckily is on the call with us, Dianne Travis-Teague. Thanks to her and her generous support, the community is going to be gathering in a hybrid event. Some of us will be in person on Lambert campus, and some of us will be on Zoom. And the only way this could happen is through Dianne and PGIAA's support. Stephanie and I, we just, we don't have the budget to do it. It's just as simple as that. So our gratitude to Dianne and the community's gratitude to Dianne for making this possible. And it's happening in just a couple of weeks. So we'll get into more of those details in just a second. Going back to Vanessa's, what Vanessa shared about myth and the heart, it just so happens that this year's theme is myth and the heart. We're taking as sort of a guiding idea this quote from John Keats: "I am certain of nothing but the holiness of the heart's affections and the truth of the imagination." And these are some of the questions that we posed to the community when we opened the call for papers back in January. What does myth say about the heart's presence and powers? What myths help us take the heart seriously, heeding the heart and practicing heart care? How do myth and the heart relate to current events and life challenges? Following Hillman, what archetypes visit when we inhabit heart space? And following Buber, how might we meet the heart, not as an it, but as a thou? And those were the prompts that the community responded to. And I think I speak for Stephanie when I say we're just thrilled and delighted at the ideas that came in. And you'll see that when you look at the program for this year. You'll see what the community has co-created, how everyone took that prompt and worked it in their own way with their own material, and will now bring it together to share and to create this thing that becomes greater than the sum of the parts. So thank you again to Dianne and the Alumni Association. Eternal gratitude. Don't know how to say thank you enough, but we will keep going. We will keep saying thank you, because this is really, truly, it couldn't happen without her. So a little bit about a hybrid mythologium. This will be the first ever hybrid mythologium. I feel like every year something a little bit different has happened, and this year it's this hybrid approach. So like I said, hybrid means there will be an in-person component and a streaming component for online guests, both at the same time, right? The dates are July 28th through 30th, which is just like 2 weeks away. And as I mentioned earlier, it's our 5th anniversary. And because it's our 5th anniversary and our first in-person gathering since 2019, Stephanie and I really are holding an intention to focus on connection and celebration, right? We're getting together, we get to hug each other for the first time in years, so let's have some fun, right? And yes, there will be happy hour. We can address any questions about happy hour in a little bit. So because it's so it'll be in person on Lambert campus and streaming for online attendees. And because we can only stream from one location at a time, we're organizing the panels a little bit differently this year. This year, instead of each presenter presenting 20 minutes live at the Mythologium, the presenters have been so gracious working with us on this somewhat new idea. But what's going on is all the presenters are recording their 20-minute presentations on video ahead of time and sending us the files so that we will compile them and post them on Vimeo in what we're calling Mythflix, which is a little stroke of genius that Stephanie came up with, which I love. And so we're going to post these videos that show all of the presentations about a week ahead of time, so that all attendees can preview any of the videos that they're most interested in and bring questions to the event. And then after the event, people will be able to go back and watch any videos that they missed or that they want to rewatch or what have you. And so I'll get to in a second to what that means for what panels look like. But I think it's going to be pretty cool. And again, just want to thank the community, especially if there's anyone listening. Just thank you for working with us on this somewhat wacky idea. But I think it's going to be pretty cool. We're also, we already did actually create a Facebook group dedicated to the 2023 Mythologium. It's only for registered guests, but it's a place where the in-person community can connect with the online community. And so there's a few posts in it already. And what we hope is that as the event gets closer, more and more people will connect in there, and then we'll have some discussions live in that place too. So that we can connect in person, like I say, in person guests with online guests. The in-person registration does include some meals. I think I might have already covered that, but it includes lunch together on Friday, lunch and happy hour on Saturday, and breakfast together on Sunday. And what's different also this year is that streamed sessions will not be recorded. So the recordings are really that MythFlix library, and the Facebook group will be ongoing, but the actual live sessions, if you want to see them, you got to be there either on Zoom or in person live. I know it seems weird to not record. Remember the olden days before we recorded everything? It's going to be kind of like that. Just a little bit unpacking the fun of MythFlix. It's a library of the recorded presentations. Like I said, we'll make them available for viewing about a week before the Mythologium. We're working on processing the recordings right now. Well, I say we. Stephanie is working on processing the recordings right now. And the idea, like I said, is to watch the presentations that you're most interested in ahead of time, or watch them all ahead of time if you have the time, and then bring your questions for presenters. And we hope that this gives you a chance to kind of reflect and dig a little more deeply. And you know, when you carry an idea around, sometimes it develops, right? Whereas when you see a live presentation, you might not come up with all the questions that you actually have right on the spot. So what does a panel look like in this new Mythologium format? We're calling the panels spotlight sessions. And what's going to happen is a panel will still have 2 or 3, or maybe I think there's one panel with 4 presenters. And what's going to happen is each presenter will give just a 5-minute summary of their recorded presentation, right? Just sort of like a pitch almost. And then so each panelist gives us a short summary of their presentation, and then the rest of the time for that panel is the yes and discussion, right? And so the moderator will facilitate the yes and discussion for, I think, at least 20 minutes for each panel. And the community can send in questions via the Zoom Q&A or raise their hand if they're in the room. And so I might not have put it in the slides, but like when someone online is presenting, their video will be projected on the big screen in the room in South Hall. And when someone in the room is presenting, the camera will be on them to send them out to Zoom, right? Just so I think maybe everyone already gets that, but just wanted to make sure. We're also going to have a vocation fair at this year's Mythologium. This is going to be in the lecture hall. On Saturday, we'll have a professional photographer who will be doing headshots for people with like a little studio thing. We'll have walk-up marketing consultations, and the Campbell Foundation will be there, as will PGIAA. You're doing great. You're almost there. Just have a couple more slides. Stephanie and I are also going to do a one-day workshop the day before the Mythologium on campus in South Hall. It's called Your Soul's Resume. And the idea of the workshop is to create what your resume might look like if it were designed to tell the story of your soul instead of to get you a job. Right. It kind of came from a time when I put a resume together to apply for a job, which I did not get the job. And I looked at the resume and I was like, this isn't me. I don't know who that person is, but it's not me. And that kind of led to playing with, well, what would a resume look like if it felt like it was me? And it became this soul's resume exercise. And so it's going to be fun. It's a one-day workshop. It's not going to be recorded. It's in person only. If you register, bring your laptop or other writing tools, because there will be a lot of like exercises, and we'll have a 90-minute lunch together to, like we say, foster these connections and the conversation. And that is about it. You can learn more at our website, which is mythconference.com. The in-person registration closes soon because you have to get head counts and things with event planning. So we're scheduled to close in-person registration on July 15th, which I know is only 2 days away. So don't tell anyone, but I'll leave it up till sometime on the 16th, just to give the Myth Salon a little more time in case anyone would like to register. And that's it. So we hope to see you at the Mythologium. Our hashtag is Myth2023. If you find the hashtag on what, Steph, Instagram, Facebook, I don't even know.
Instagram, anywhere really.
Okay, yeah. So we'll be posting with that hashtag during the event. So even if you don't register, you can find that hashtag and follow along a little bit. And these handles would be the way to find us on social. And that is my last slide. I'll leave it up for just a second, I guess. Or Steph, should we pop these into the chat maybe?
Absolutely, I can do that. Yeah.
Awesome. Okie doke. Awesome. Well, so I will stop sharing. And Dana, I think back to you, or Will, is it back to you?
Congratulations. It looks fantastic. I can't wait to go. And I'm looking forward to hearing everyone's thoughts about it. And one thing I want to say, just as far as somebody who's gone to a couple myth conferences and has been looking for a certain thing. I go to one, I'm going back to it in Ireland this year, called the International Association for Comparative Mythology. And I go to this other one called the Mythopoeic Society's MythCon. And the IACM, which is often in Edinburgh, this year in Ireland, it's always focused on language. Even though it's about myth, it's really rooted in linguistics. And then when we get to the Mythopoeic Society, it's all about the Inklings. It's all about mythopoesis. And when I go, what's lacking at both of them is any kind of emphasis on depth psychology and any kind of, and this isn't to say that your Mythologium is limited to depth psychology. I experience it as something that's wide open for any space of myth, but what you've done is something that was missing and very much needed and wanted by individuals like myself, but I think a lot of the mythological community, that was not completely met by those other conferences, which are fantastic, and I go to them. But I just want to put that out, and I think it's a really wonderful thing. And the other thing that's never happened with the Myth Conference before, except for one wonderful, beautiful time, is for it to be at Pacifica's campus. And what a special, amazing thing to bring a Myth Conference to the place of the Myth degree and to the place of the Campbell and Gambudis archives. I hope that this is the first of many. Congratulations on that alignment, and I'll thank Dianne with you. And with that, I just want to open it up to anybody's thoughts, starting with Dana.
Will, one of the things that occurs to me in watching how Joanna concluded the presentation were all of these social media hashtags and things like that. This is a new world that we're living in. And I really think that it absolutely relates to the dispensation of how myth and media are being promulgated to the broader culture at large. In-person, live events in places, these are almost becoming a thing of the past. I mean, you look at how movies are going to go forward. And I think we have really no better spokesperson for social media than Selina, who I remember a few years ago, you were talking about doing these little short snippet things that, I kind of like dismissed as, because I'm not a creature of social media. But now, Selina, maybe you would talk to us a little bit about your use of social media. And I don't know how quickly you could access a few of these things, but they're like 90 seconds long, and different social media platforms have different bandwidth time lengths that you can put on. You can't put a half-hour video on Twitter or TikTok or what have you. So what do you do, and how do you use it, and how'd you get there?
Yeah, well, I decided that one of the reasons is I got very frustrated that coaches were putting themselves out as leaders in the community. And I think we have to be really careful about if we want to make a presence and we have, we spent all these years in the degrees and other people are circumventing what we have spent our lives working for. I think that a lot of professionals with PhDs need to really take social media seriously.
Is it okay to look at your partner's phone? Absolutely. If you are in a committed relationship, I believe you have the right to look at their phone. And if they won't let you, I would consider that maybe you change your relationship, because clearly they have something to hide.
I think on TikTok, I started a year and a half ago. I have 62,000 followers. I just started with YouTube Shorts because that's, the same thing. I'm transferring to that one. LinkedIn, I have almost 11,000 followers. Everything that I'm doing, and I'm doing this myself, believe me, it's like I'm having 3 jobs at this point. But so I am trying to put information out there that is accessible for the average person. I am not looking to make money on TikTok. I'm looking to make money on my podcast via sponsorship, yes, but I'm not looking to make money on it. I'm looking to educate people, to make a difference in the world, and to find ways to connect with people. There have been some of my TikToks that when I speak, and I don't always speak, because I'm so busy, I have to do 12 at once. And sometimes it's very frustrating because I only have so much time. But there was one that I did on malignant narcissism.
Do you know the 7 signs of a malignant narcissist unraveling? 1, their behavior becomes more and more bizarre. 2, they become unstable. 3, they become impulsive. 4, they become more and more unpredictable.
And 130,000 people responded to that one. Like, there's no way that I could get that information out anywhere, anyway, any other way. Now, some of mine only get 200, but some get tens and tens of thousands. It depends what I do and how centered I am, to be honest. The more centered I am, but sometimes if you work a full-time job and then you're doing this and you have this big of a window, not everyone is perfect, but this happens to everybody, so it's not only me. So I think social media is the future, and I would love to see more mythologists on TikTok. I think that's lacking completely. People want this information. You've got to connect. We can't make change unless we're part of it.
So what you're saying is that there are people, and you're calling them coaches or what have you, but these are non-professional people putting out advice that ought to be handled by licensed psychologists and medical doctors.
Correct. And yes, and they don't have licenses. Many of them have no BA even. So it's like, if you went to have a surgery, you wouldn't go to someone who has no education, no license. And, honestly, it's a crazy world in the world of psychology. And I'm sure there's similar responses in mythology, but we have licenses and other people don't. And so I'm pushing through. And there's other really amazing psychologists out there that are not depth psychologists. Some are cognitive, some are trauma psychologists. And we are all pushing out there. There's actually a hashtag psychologists on TikTok. There should be a hashtag mythologists on TikTok. We have got to change the frame, because if we don't change the frame, we will be lost.
Mm-hmm. Do you have one of those that you could, I think for those in the crowd who, like me, are sort of challenged by social media, I've never even gone on TikTok, but what does it look like?
Well, it's really fun. And I'm going to tell you a story. I have put an 87-year-old on TikTok and she is loving it. She thinks it's the greatest thing because everybody has their own TV show and she's loving it. So I'm using this also as something that, someone can do as they're sitting in their bed, they're ill and they can't move or whatever. It's another form of entertainment. And there's everything from, pet stories to psychologists, to medical doctors, to plastic surgeons, to you name it, giving information. There's such an incredible amount. You just have to choose, but there's all kinds of options that you want. And my feed is mostly professionals. I'm getting the information from TikTok. That's where I'm getting.
Let me suggest that, to your point about, some people that are putting forward information that may not be leaders or shouldn't be leaders, putting that information forward. One of the things I found when I went to Pacifica and when I participated in the Joseph Campbell Foundation or any of these communities, I found that a lot of my preconceptions were not just educated out of me through training, but just also socialized. And there's just so much you learn, from the social environment. And so I would say, it's not just that some people like that may not be trained, it's that they may not have had the opportunity to participate in community in a way that, for example, everybody goes to the graduate myth program with some inflated notions. Everybody goes into graduate school with some inflated notions of their own sense of self-importance in their work. And of course, there's a blessing and a curse. In some ways, we then all of a sudden meet a whole bunch of other people that are really smart and have a lot of good ideas. Some of them are actually the ideas that we thought we were really unique for having, and then all of a sudden, and it humbles you. But it's not just that I learned from people like Dennis, it's that I was humbled by my community. And so I wonder, to bring back your original point to what we're talking about around community is, I think that leaders, if you want to be a leader, it's really hard to be a leader that's not in community with other people that are working at that high level. And that's why I think it's so special. I know some people that are going to be at the Mythologium, and I think about some of the people that are being gathered together, the foundation of peer review in all of academia. And it's a real service and a real gift to bring community together so that it can reinforce, consider, observe, and sometimes humble the contributors. Yeah, and I wonder if any of you guys experience something like that too. If you feel, what effects come from getting the community together, what effects on the field and on the individual scholars.
Well, I'm teaching a 9-month long course on Dante's Divine Comedy, and I have people from all over the planet taking it. And if they can't make it, given that time slot, then they're recorded and they can pick up on it. I am astonished at how Zoom can being in a Zoom call like this can create intimacy. There's some mysterious psychic energy transfer that takes place. And of course, the poem, I'm speaking about the Divine Comedy, but I've done others online, carry their own energy. So I'm just fascinated by the medium. And I'm also so impressed with Joanna and Stephanie in the way they keep morphing the mythologium forward, given the circumstances, the environment, and so forth. So, yeah, I've taught screenwriters in the Philippines, and next February I'll teach the second round of psychotherapists in India. I mean, this could never happen. And so it's just, I don't know, I'm enamored of the medium of Zoom and what it allows to have happen on a heartfelt level. Yeah.
I agree completely, Dennis. I think, the Zoom can be just as magical a container as a room, can be. You know, it depends on what everyone brings to the community and you know, what everyone's willing to do. Will, to your question, you know, one thing that I marvel at again and again is this sense of the opening of the portals of possibility when the community gathers. You know, people have conversations that never would have happened otherwise, and they pick up projects that they never would have picked up otherwise, and they have ideas for projects, for collaborations over here, or, oh my goodness, you're in a play, I'm going to go to that play. And just so much ferment happens when the community gathers. And you know, we really try to foster an open-hearted space. We've done that since day one. The theme this year is the heart, but we have always tried to foster an open-hearted space. And I think that makes a difference. I think, you know, people gather in good faith and they share, and they are shared with, and then just, you know, so many possibilities open up. So that would be my reflection, just the sense of possibilities, like just amplifying, multiplying.
Community is a little bit like the complexity of nature, in that it morphs into whatever it needs in order to survive. And it takes various voices in order to engender the sense of community. When you end up with redundancy in community, you end up removing difference from it. When you end up with people who think completely alike, they don't allow for contrary opinions. And I'm struck by, at the very beginning when we went on Zoom, I approached Vanessa with doing some work with us, and we did a couple of Zoom sessions called Transforming Consciousness. We struggle, if you will, to find monthly topics to come up with. When we were all locked in during COVID, we came up with twice a month. Vanessa does this once a week. I don't know how in the world she mines the culture for the quality of guests that she has on her radio show, KPFK, I'll give you a plug. And she is so talented, and Pacifica is so fortunate to have her in the community. We need to turn the tides on the idea that because it's like us, that's where we go. Because we don't, if we are encouraged to always follow the path of similarity, we're never going to move beyond this sense. The whole spirit of Ubuntu, I am because we are, and that we will only grow as I become more like you, and I become more of a sense of othering and belonging, and my world then becomes larger as a result of that. Maybe, Vanessa, you would talk to us a little bit about the challenges of reaching out the way that you have done for so many years on your radio show. I mean, you just, I don't know how you maintain such composure under such never-ending, seemingly never-ending deadlines, and then doing Pacifica on top of it.
Thank you, Dana. I mean, I will say that the first few years, it was very challenging. It was really, really hard. In fact, I would say probably like the first half decade, it was like ongoing issue after issue, challenges after challenges, but it takes me back to the heart. It takes me back to the soul. I feel this deep calling that regardless of the situations that we're going through in society, as a collective, in the personal level too, dealing with my own personal like health issues or family health issues, there was something bigger than that would take me forward to follow whatever that was. Kind of like I mentioned earlier around like myth, like, you know, the community seems to just somehow take me under their wing, even though I'm not even part of that program, but it's like I am just to a major, like a larger scale. So when it comes to the challenges, what comes through for me right now is, when you mention how can you do this like week after week? And what came through as I heard you say that is, I don't see it as work. It's not work. It's my calling. It's something that I don't have to get paid for it, which oftentimes that's not even the case. I'm not even doing it for the money. It's something much more deeper. And I feel that when we can reside in that space, it doesn't feel like work. And when it doesn't feel like work, you can do it not weekly, you can do it every day, because it's not even so much something that you're actually doing versus your being, like you're being in the energy. So I would perhaps say that that's what has been able to sustain me now for, I think, close to like 8 years.
I think of a line from Dream Tending, where because I'm pretty sure you've connected with Steve, and I remember he says in there that anything done with the will quickly be exhausted.
And Vanessa, could I ask you, who's your audience?
So that's a really great question. So it has, I feel like the show has evolved with me. So when I started the program years ago, there was no resonance, there was no energy around Pacifica. And then when I started Pacifica, I started sharing, I started having these conversations, people were interested, and all of a sudden that energy started to evolve and it started to amplify and expand. So I feel like my audience has been evolving with me. So as far as like who they are right now, when I do check the statistics, it's pretty awesome for me to just see the fact that there's different ages. So, I mean, you can look at the stats and you see people that are like in their 20s, you see people that are in their 30s, you see people that are in their 40s. So that to me is really exciting as a woman in my 40s, because it's like, oh, that's pretty awesome that people in their 20s can resonate with the work. And I also too like to get to the level of the people that I'm interviewing. So if I'm interviewing, obviously, a scholar from Pacifica, there's a certain level that organically, I just feel that I know how to get to that level. But if it's not someone from Pacifica, it does not mean that I belittle you. It does not mean that I see you as low or that you're not able to actually carry an interview or a conversation. But it's just basically feeling people energetically to just kind of meet them where they are for the process of the interview. So
That's wonderful. Thank you, Vanessa.
yeah, you're welcome.
And I don't know if you mentioned the name of it, Transforming Consciousness, and generally the topic, spiritual philosophy and psychology. And as we're now joined by my friend Sunil Parab, who I asked Dana if we could bring him in. Hey, Sunil. Sunil and I met through another radio show I was doing for the Santa Barbara News Press, and ended up doing something with the head of the Sanskrit department at the University of Mumbai. And we connected, and then eventually we got together at the IACM conference in Edinburgh. And it's a good example. We've, had great conversations there that came out of the conference, and that came out of that earlier collaboration. And we've been talking and collaborating for years since. And so when this event was coming on, I asked if he would potentially want to join us. And thanks for being with us, Sunil. If you've been tuning in, I wonder if you have any thoughts about community, or about how community has been working for you in your mythology classrooms down in India.
So, hi everyone, namaste. So in India, we consider India as one of the, living ancient traditions. So still there are a lot of rituals which are being practiced since 2000 years and so on. And that's why myths over here are associated with our identity. And that's why that, now as we are going ahead with the technology, people are more interested to know about our identity, where we are coming from, why we are following certain rituals. If we are associated with the deities, what is the reason we are associated with the particular deities? And that's why it's the journey of searching your own identity. And that's why people get connected. People are finding the scholars from whom they can learn about mythology. And so, as Dana mentioned, during COVID, people were within their houses, and that was the opportunity when people could actually connect more through Zoom. And we had a lot of scholars like Will also helped us through many sessions, because what you study in Pacifica is very different from what we study in India. We are studying the same topic, that's comparative mythology, but the approach that you are using is very different. The depth psychology is something different we don't use very often in India. So that was a time, yes, we could use the technology, and people across the globe could connect to understand the different approaches. And yes, so that is continued. We continue to connect together, and thanks to Stephanie and Joanna, the conference that they are organizing, that is also a way of connecting with all the scholars and students of Pacifica. So yeah, that's what is going on in India currently, Will.
Awesome. And are you coming? You're not coming to the Mythologium, but you're participating online. Is that right?
Yes. Currently, getting visa clearance for US is a tough job. During COVID, the travel was, it was on a halt, and that's why a lot of visa proceedings are on the way. So it's taking a lot of time over here. So I'm joining online.
Thanks for joining us so early.
It's early. Yeah.
It's so awesome, actually. We introduced so many relevant points for our conversation about community, just that we're able to bring totally different methods into conversation that are even regional all over the world. And I actually am curious if Stephanie and Joanna would like to talk about the hybrid format and the benefits of that, because it seems to really have the best of both worlds, and that you're able to create a global conversation. People like yourself are able to participate, and at the same time, you're able to have the in-person magic that a lot of people are looking for. Is this the first hybrid Mythologium? Okay, can I ask, what are you anticipating? What do you expect with the community?
We expect that there will be some trickster visits, and we will work through them. There have been trickster visits since day one with Zoom. And so now we're just like, come to us, trickster. We're trying something brand new. But I do think that, having the format be new, it kind of requires us all to kind of sit up and pay attention. We can't just sit back and zone out like if it was a normal conference, right? So I think, Will, to your point, I think it's really exciting to be able to have that best of both worlds opportunity. And we do sacrifice something, right? We're not going to have a recording of the sessions like we have had on Zoom. And, not everyone is going to get those hugs that Stephanie's going to be giving out, because I guarantee you, she will hug you if you show up at this conference. And I do think that like I say, my vision is for those portals of possibility to open. I'll be really happy when people online connect with people in person. And I have every confidence that people online will connect with people online, and every confidence that people in person will connect with people in person. My real goal is to bridge those two groups and really create one community. And so my hope is that the format that we're trying will help do that. And I know that everyone's going to show up with their open-hearted minds and souls, and that's what's going to really make it happen. And can I just share super quick? This might help too. We have Goddess M&Ms. I don't know if you can see.
Amazing.
There's our logo. So these Goddess M&Ms. These are superpower M&Ms.
M is for mother, is that right?
M is for Mythologium. M&M just got confused.
Got it.
So yeah, did that answer your question? Well, actually, Stephanie, I mean, did you want to chime in on the whole hybrid format at all?
Yeah, I think you're totally what you brought up too was connecting both the parts. I think we're very intentional about creating a container every year, and that is where the magic happens. And so how do you create a container when you have two parts? And what are ways to integrate those two parts so that the community kind of keeps bouncing ideas off each other, and the energy forms, and just all the magic that happens. So we've been very intentional about that. And like Joanna said, I know the community will get behind it and bring all that as well. So, yeah.
Every year, we put out the call for proposals, a topic and a prompt, and we just like throw it out there to see what happens. And every year, what comes back, it dazzles us. What the ideas are that people come up with, and B, the themes that come up and kind of coalesce just give me goosebumps every single year. And you can see it in the program. We have a panel this year about Medusa. Who would have guessed? The theme is myth in the heart, and we have 2 presentations about Medusa. And that's just one of what, Steph, how many panels do we have? Like 15, 20 panels, something like that? 30?
40 presenters.
40 presenters. So witnessing how the ideas enter into conversation with each other is always just amazing. And so one thing we're doing this year, which is different as part of the hybrid kind of format, is that the online presenters will all be with online presenters. So every panel is either going to be online presenters or in-person presenters. So there won't be like, jumping back and forth midstream in a panel. And even still with that like kind of rule to make things work well, the panels still coalesced in ways that just delight me. So encouraging everyone to take a look at the program, if only to see what the community has created.
Have you given any thought to taking the presentations and stringing them together and putting them up on YouTube?
We certainly have, and it's called MythFlix. So
Okay.
that's why we're asking the presenters to pre-record their presentations, so the presenters, all 40 presenters, are pre-recording their presentations and sending us the video file. We are consolidating the video files and putting them up on Vimeo in a way to make it so that the whole community, in person or online, can access them ahead of time and preview any presentations that they are super interested in, right? And in the Vimeo interface, you can type comments, and I think you can like and things like that too. So we're hoping that some interaction happens there. And then that video collection will be available ongoing after the event as well.
Okay.
So kind of combining, doing a little bit of pre-work and having that body of material available. And then in person, the focus is on the conversation. Really, we're going to be spending more time in yes and discussions than we are in like formal presentations.
Mm-hmm.
And then, carrying forward, hopefully the connections are happening. Like if someone online sees an in-person presentation and is like, oh my goodness, I have to connect with that person, they might be able to find them in the Facebook group or via email or what have you. And vice versa. If someone in person sees an online presentation, it's like, oh, I have to connect with them. There will be ways for people to connect across that digital divide.
Will the people who aren't registered be able to view those presentations?
Nope, you got to register.
Got to register. Okay, so that says it. We need to register for this, and those will be on Vimeo now and forever. I mean, it's that sort of thing. They'll be on.
I mean, as long as we have a Vimeo, they'll be there.
Okay, and is it password protected, that sort of thing?
Yeah, we'll link it up probably to the website that has the outline of the schedule. And
Okay.
so you'll have a separate schedule where you can click on each of the presenters' names, and it'll take
Okay.
you to the video. And it'll have their bio and all their information in Vimeo underneath, and then they'll
Oh,
present.
that sounds great. That sounds fabulous.
If you guys have your choice, would you like in coming years to have it located at Pacifica's campus?
It's a really great question, Dennis. I mean, honestly, let's see how we do with hybrid, right? I mean, and everyone, please, fingers crossed for us, because you know, this is something new, and it takes energy to lift something new off the ground and make it happen. And so we rely on the community to help us, you know, when we got to figure out a trickster thing or what have you. And I know the community will. I know they will. But yeah, we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. Well, you know, as you guys put on the cup, that little bumper sticker slogan, risk taking is myth making. So good for you guys. I mean,
who said that, Dennis? Who said that quote?
Some oracle.
That's a quote from Dennis from his keynote speech in 2021. And we put it on a mug. We made mugs the following year with the logo and with that quote on it. And
it's the only cup I use to drink coffee in.
Let me know if you ever need another, because I have some spares.
Oh, let's visit. Yeah.
And there might or might not be some mugs at the Mythologium, just saying.
If there aren't any more direct questions or conversations about the community at the Mythologium, I thought I might, while we're together as a group of mythologists, invite a conversation around motifs, mythic motifs that come to mind when we start thinking about mythology. We all would think of Sangha, so let's dig a little deeper. But what are some motifs or some archetypal examples that come up since we're together as a group of mythologists around community? And if anybody, I'll look around, see if anybody has an immediate pop of an answer. Okay, great. Yeah, Joanna.
The Avengers assemble.
Oh, go on, please.
I mean, just, you know, that image, you remember the video of like, you know, all the different Avengers assembling, and I remember seeing that meme and just like feeling the power of, and I'm not even an Avenger person, you know, but just that snapshot image of the powers gathering and assisting each other and being stronger for it, right? It's a very contemporary myth, I grant you. However, I think it has that kind of power.
Definitely. And to me, it brings up another great conversation that I had a long time ago, but now with Robert Walter, the former head of the Joseph Campbell Foundation. And he made a big emphasis around what he called the ensemble hero, which is this idea that it's not just a singular hero, that these collectives. And he tells this story about how the Enterprise is the hero, not Picard or not Kirk. And, you know, some of you guys have heard him tell this story. But then you sure, lo and behold, you do see it. You see community heroes, you see group ensemble heroes becoming the norm, actually, team heroes, Team NATO responding to the world right now in Ukraine, etc. But the team hero has been on the rise, and it's a really good, we have to wonder, what does it mean for us to see this displacement of singular heroes with increasing teams? I'd like to think it's a good sign.
I just have a friend and I who lives in Dallas. Joanna and Stephanie know Larry Allums, who was the director of the Dallas Institute, and others I think here know him as well.
I got to meet him as well in Dallas, yeah.
I thought you had. It was for 20 years. Well, he and I met in Albuquerque and then rented a car and drove to Santa Fe. And the second day we were there, we made the trek to Chaco Canyon, which was it was about 3.5 hours to get there, but through that desert landscape. And if you haven't visited Chaco Canyon, it's one of those ancient sacred sites on the planet and considered one of the most sacred. And then the next day we drove to Chimayo, the sacred site of healing. So sacred sites are just archetypally so powerful, and every one of you, I bet, has a sacred site that you've been to, and maybe again and again. So that's one that is really with me right now. Yeah.
I think that as we're looking at motifs, the two that come up for me are bridges and labyrinths. And, you know, when we want to reach somebody, we build a bridge to them. And that bridge can take place in time and space. It takes the effort of human participation. It may be writing an email or sending a letter or writing a song or painting a picture or taking a photograph. The motif of the bridge connects opposites. It connects what is separate from one another. And now we have a culture of roads. So we have webs, but every web is a bridge and every crossroads is a node in the web. And these are things that will make our culture and our world stronger as we have free access to the ways of coming and going, which makes what we're living in a kind of a labyrinth. And I would like to say that the things that we participate in that are labyrinths and not mazes, because the labyrinth always provides us with a way in which we come out of it okay. It takes us in and it brings us out. And these are really useful motifs for us to learn as we're working our way into cultures. Right now, they seem to be separating, driving us back into the sense of individuality, as if somehow or another we should not trust one another. There's a thing that's happening in Santa Cruz right now. I don't know how many of you have heard about the otter. Well, there's this otter who apparently is a female otter that either it was born in captivity at the Monterey Bay Aquarium, or it is the offspring of an otter that was there. But however, it is hijacking the surfers' surfboards. And if you go on the web and you type otter Santa Cruz, you'll get this otter that's out there. And every day at 4:30, the news crews are out there and they're trying to figure out what the otter is doing. And it's taking the surfers' surfboards. They'll fall off the waves and the otter will climb up on top of it. Well, you're not going to do, you don't want to do battle with a 4-foot otter. And it is really something, because there are people now who are rooting for the otter. We want the otter, we don't want him to hurt anybody or anything like that, but we don't want to do damage to the otter, but he's kind of a folk hero otter. And I think the more that we find things outside of ourselves to believe in, the hope of the otter, the hope of Bigfoot or something like that, somehow or another, we don't pathologize this thing as being a bad thing. It's part of ourselves. Everything that's out there is a manifestation of either something we love or fear. And if we can move beyond any kind of fear and have no fear, then we have absolute love. And we can look upon the otter and we can look upon the Bigfoot, and all of that is just simply a symbol for the things that we fear inside ourselves. So this kind of work that you're doing with bringing these people together into a room or a single location, and encouraged by Dianne and Pacifica, does everything to make the belief in community as a cauldron to hold the sacred heart energy that we all have within us, and to trust that and to follow it and go forward and find a bridge, find a road.
Building what you just said into Dennis's point about sacred sites, one of the biggest community events ever, right? When we would have done these solstice events at the Hinges, these sacred sites, this would have been like, you get together for your barn dance once in a while. Very rare to have that kind of a community. And you go back to the Neolithic era, and the gatherings around these sacred sites were often the biggest community events. And they were there to do all the good stuff. It was like going to Disneyland for Christmas to have an orgy and meet your partner, and whatever, all the fun stuff, all of it mixed together before it ever got split up. And I think about that as a big informing concept for me at these projects I'm doing, with Chris Holmes at COSM, and we're doing some pretty fun stuff. But I really like to think about community in the context of bringing people to sacred sites together to have experiences that go back to these Neolithic experiences at the Henges. And for that to work, the location needs to be a little bit of a pilgrimage site, which is true for Pacifica, for anybody interested in myth, with Opus there and with Campbell's desk there and all that stuff. It is pilgrimage worthy. It is innermost chamber worthy because it's a place where a lot of mythology conversations and special things with special people has gone down there. So it's got the innermost chamber quality. It's got the pilgrimage quality to support one of those real original holiday community gathering things that reminds me of those Stonehenge events.
Well, I just wanted to add in something. It was very interesting that Diana mentioned of bridges, because I was thinking of the motive of building the bridge from Ramayana. When we are talking about different forces coming together. So Ram is building bridge to Lanka, and there he has the monkey army, the humans, and also a squirrel comes in, holding one stone, and everyone is laughing at the squirrel. So Ram says that, it's not about how much you are contributing, but it is the intention what matters. So even the crab and, small animals, whoever could contribute, could come together and contribute it. And interestingly, it was about the bridge, as Dana mentioned.
Beautiful.
Well, and it's also interesting in some places, like in Avignon, there's a bridge that goes halfway across the river that never got finished. And they just leave it. It's a signature bridge. I think bridges are a very powerful metaphor for, it's also in wartime, it's the one thing that they will blow up first.
The Kirk Bridge, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, it's things, it represents being able to move from one place to another.
Have you guys seen the ant bridges, where the ants will collectively create a bridge out of their own teamworkness? That's what I think about. One of the great archetypal expressions of teamwork is the team bridge, and if you think about it, no bridge really isn't an ant bridge, because no bridge, as you're saying, got built without an incredible amount of teamwork, without the crab, without the squirrel, without a huge, huge team.
I don't know if it's critical, but what you brought to mind when you first asked was trees. And I think a little while ago at Pacifica, somebody brought up the Mother Tree book and how they were talking about how the root system of the ancient trees will lend nourishment to other trees needing it and protect each other up underneath the ground, and just the way that ecosystem works in its intuitiveness and understanding what the others need and helping each other when they're down is a interesting vision of community for me.
I love that one. And I want to point to Dianne down there too, who's serving a function of Mother Tree for many of these offshoot myth-oriented. She supported the Myth Salon, the Mythologium, and so many things, so many trees have been able to get to a healthy size as a result of that nourishment.
It's all about giving. It's all about inviting the new and taking that risk or that opportunity to try something new and to try something different. It is our honor to welcome the Mythologium to the Lambert campus. And we look forward to what it will bring and how it will bring our community, not only our internal community, but our external and greater Santa Barbara community together. Because as people and as Pacifica, we sometimes forget that there's this great big community out there that might like to share, that might like that bridge, that might like to be a part of us, as we so much are a part of them. So it's a great time for all of us. And it's a great time to look forward and to welcome the trickster and to embrace the trickster, and perhaps let the trickster teach us something that we don't know even about ourselves.
Part of the community too. When those trees, when they connect their roots beneath the surface, what connects the roots is actually mushrooms. And the mushrooms that do that connecting are actually, they hollow out. It's the dead cells. So it's actually only through the self-emptying that interconnection can happen, which is a recurring motif that we know about a lot. So that selflessness and this integral nature to the establishment of that nourishing community.
When you mentioned the tree, Stephanie, I remember what I was going to say, which was when we had Louis Schwartzberg on here, he showed the effects, the hybrid nature of the natural world, where you have the fungi and you have this rhizome deep within it. And the rhizome as a motif is something that we think of in terms of nature, but we forget that it actually permeates the soul. And what we have happening within ourselves as a relationship between the head and the heart and the soul allows us to reach that soul within another person and within the community and within the cosmos. So there's a rhizome effect that is not just a symbol, but it's a reality. We operate many times in the relationship between where we are as a conceiving individual and the world. And when we conceive of something, suddenly that thing can manifest. Now we call it a synchronicity, but a lot of times what happens is we fall out of synchronicity in order to cope with our patterns of engaging reality. The Tao is always in harmony with itself. And so we think of synchronicity as being unusual, but thinking in terms of the Tao, everything is always in harmony. So those patterns of reaching synchronicity, like with the rhizome, with the tree and the fungi and the mushrooms, and which is why when we disturb the natural balance by upsetting a bee's colony or destroying certain, like clear cutting of redwoods and that sort of thing, we really wreak havoc in the natural world, not just by one species getting out of balance, but by an entire region falling out of balance. So I think it's really important for us to find models that heal the whole and don't drive us apart from one another.
Well, critical in this time. Sorry, Sunil.
Yeah, Will, I would like to pick up on the term that you had used, the sacred spaces. So I was just thinking about, like in Indian villages, we have a sacred space in temple ground. So the village is a community. The people are absolutely connected, but there has to be a place where they can gather and they can communicate. So whenever they get time, they come to the temple complex. They sit over there, they talk about their problems and all those things. So there is give and take. I've, just as we are going through this discussion, I just thought that this kind of a platform is very important. That sacred space is very important, even if we are connected together. So for example, Will and I got connected in 2014. If I have to be precise, it was October 2014. And then the sacred space was Joseph Campbell Foundation's Mythological Roundtable. And we connected often together because of Mythological Roundtable. So that was the sacred space at that time. Now, what Stephanie and Joanna are creating is Mythologium. Again, that is a sacred space where we can come together and communicate. Today, at this moment, Salon is the sacred space. So we, even if we are connected, we need a space where we can come and we can communicate. Mm-hmm. So I think along with the bridges, that sacred space also means a lot. I would like to also add in that, things happen for a reason. In Indian philosophy, we believe that things happen for a reason. And so people get connected for a reason. But to continue that connection, to continue that conversation, these sacred spaces are necessary. Just a month back, I was in Himalayas and I was doing some field research over there. And I came across one anthropologist from Paris. So we just met over there because we were working on a similar topic. We communicated this, that. And then I updated her about mythologium, that, this is something happening and this is where we can connect together. So, of course, connections happen, but that sacred space is necessary where we can come together and communicate. Thank you.
Beautiful. I wonder, did you experience the sacredness of the space in the first Mythologium when you guys were all together?
I would say yes, because I remember the first Mythologium at Morro Bay. And remember, Joanna and Stephanie, we thought that it was just like the best place ever in the world and that you would want to go back there. But when you couldn't go back there, there were other spaces. And I think wherever you stand, that place becomes the sacred space. You bring the sacredness to the space. It's not necessarily that you take it, but you bring it with you. I don't know if you two would agree, but I thought Morro Bay was like the top. And I still think that it was like the birthplace of the Mythologium.
The interesting part I liked about Mythologium is that they are not mentioning it as question and answer. If I'm not wrong, it is agree and answer, right?
It's yes and.
Yes, and. So, whenever, most of the times when we are talking about mythology and conferences, there are a lot of audiences who are ready to take out the mistakes. I think Mythologium is very relaxed place. You can go over there, express. I thought it's not a competition, but it's more about expressing yourself. So that is what I really liked about Mythologium.
Thank you for sharing that, Sunil.
One of our good friends on the Myth Salon is a fellow named Phil Cousineau. And what Phil does is he makes pilgrimages to sacred sites. He has just come back from Chartres outside of Paris. And in San Francisco, at the Grace Cathedral, there is a replica labyrinth in this cathedral of Chartres Cathedral. And I'm just struck by the motif of labyrinths as a way to kind of like allow the psyche to do a meditative process on something. Apparently, and this was new to me. I mean, we've all seen labyrinths and we've all studied what the labyrinths do and about. But apparently, in a labyrinth, you're supposed to enter the labyrinth with a problem or a plan, something that you want to focus upon. And then you walk this labyrinth, you get to the center and you turn around and come back. Unlike a maze, a corn maze or something like that, the labyrinth is really designed to pull that healing, that clarity, that awareness out of you. But sacred spaces, they're really, they're there for a reason. When I was in India, I visited the caves at Ajanta and Ellora. You talk about a community building project. I mean, this is on the level of the pyramids, except it's inside stone mountains. And these places were designed to bring forth the sacred character of the community. You could go in there yourself, but by the same token, it heals the community.
And Dana, the important thing over there is that, when you're talking about going inside the stone, or, when we talk about going inside the sanctum, if you see in Himalayas, we talk about meditating within the caves. So the stone there, the importance is that it reciprocates the energy. The vibes that you are sending out, they again come to you. So always whenever you are going inside a temple or inside those stone structures, it is being suggested that go with the positive vibes. When the community is going inside together and everyone is giving out the positive vibes, it reflects back on the people. And that's why when people are coming out, they feel very positive.
I was gonna say, they keep doing all these increasing number of sonic measurements of holy sites, measuring the sound and mapping the sound of holy spaces all over the world. And they find that, not only do they avoid the right angles that would kill the sound so it's loud, but there seems to be a lot of intention in the movement of the sound energy in these sacred spaces. And this is old, all the way back to old Neolithic era, even in the way that so if they're shaping the environment for the purpose of the sound energy, to shape the sound energy, you can only imagine that it's even deeper than the sound.
Yes, and this is again interesting as part of community, because whenever we are coming across and we are communicating, it's again give and take of the energies. We are understanding each other's frequency, and we are trying to understand if we can match up with each other's frequency.
And you feel that whenever you go to the right type of conference. Not every conference you go to. Anytime I go to Esplin, I feel like I'm feeling that, just a whole environment filled up with that energy. I feel that way when I'm at Pacifica. So anybody who's thinking about going to this thing and who's never been to the campus, I can't imagine a better introduction to myth. If you're thinking about the myth program and the Pacifica community, it literally, I couldn't imagine a better place to start than just to see what it's like to be in the energy of the group in that space. It would have been my introduction had I had that opportunity for sure. And that's really probably one of the best reasons to go for me, is just to be there and bathe in each other's unconscious, unspoken darshan. Does anybody have any final thoughts? I know we're going to come to a close here, and I can see Dana starting to think about wrapping us up. Any reflections anybody'd like to share before we say we'll see you at the Mythologium?
Well, I'll share that last month I was in Switzerland for the Jungian 15th anniversary conference. And it was really interesting because I heard Dana mention the word cauldron earlier, and that was one of the symbols next to heart that have been kind of spiraling for me. So there was a workshop that I took there, and we were working with clay. So we're working with our hands, and it was very interesting that I had this big chunk of clay, and the more I would morph the clay, the more I would see the heart. And the more I would see the heart, the more I would go into my mind and say to myself, I want to create something different. And the more I would think that, the more I would see the heart. So eventually I had to surrender to the heart. So that kind of takes me into the reason why I wanted to share that, because it's still very present. That experience that I had with the heart is that I pay attention to words, and I just find it very interesting, the choice of words. And when I was reading the description for the conference, I noticed that, and Joanna mentioned it earlier, practicing heart care. And that really stayed with me, practicing heart care. And so for those that may be tuned in and that are listening to us when it comes to the conference, can you both share in resonance to how can one practice heart care? What does that mean to you? And how is that implemented into the conference?
Thank you, Vanessa. It's such a great question. This might sound like a bumper sticker, but I think in one sense, it can boil down to identifying and then following, doing what one loves, being where one loves, eating what one loves, reading what one loves, finding the things that you love, and then bringing them into your life, right? And letting yourself love them. And letting the heart unfold, letting the heart flower. And I believe the heart does that when we cooperate with it. And I think of it as letting the heart be the CEO, and then the mind becomes the project manager that executes on the heart's desire, right? Whatever that might be. And it's going to be different for everybody, but it's so easy to, at least I find it so easy to deprioritize the things I love for the things that make sense, right? And so just coming back again and again and again to that memory of what the heart's desires are, and then how to deliver those to the heart.
Yeah, I would say one example of heart care is exactly what the Mythologium is. And I think part of the inspiration for creating it is something about lifting up out of the everyday and going into this space, into these ideas and immersing in mythology and people who study mythology. And somehow that just enlivens the soul, it enlivens the heart. It makes the words go out onto the page when they can't at home. It opens up all the doorways, and I need both. You know, I need Hestia. I need to come home too. But there's something about going out and evoking Hermes into this space and all the knowledge and wisdom in that, and that just always it just fills my heart up. So I would put that into the heart care category.
Dennis, how about some closing thoughts from you?
Well, this has just been one of the best myth salons that I've been part of. And I think all of us demonstrated in a living way the content of what we've been talking about. Myths to me are equally fascinating in the content that they express, but also the context in which they express them. So this was richly mythic, both in the contextualizing and also in the content. So talk about a full heart. I'm completely filled with gratitude for this evening.
The notion of gratitude continues to come up. And you all know that I'm working on this book project, one part gratitude, one part trust. And it's a book about food and culture, but it's more than that. And it has to do with this idea that gratitude and trust are sort of the flip sides of the coin of participation. That as we think about gratitude for what got us here, we can trust how we're going to go forth. They reveal one another. They are lenses for seeing one another. And this project has just enriched my life in ways I never thought it could possibly. But it's just a metaphor for kind of how I choose to live. When I walk across every day, when I walk my dog over to the point at Santa Cruz by the lighthouse, I just realize how this place is shaped and how the water shapes the coastline and how it evolves, and trust that no matter how it evolves, it's going to be a way that brings forth a beautiful part of the coastline, even as it slips into the water. I really think that you've hit on a real key concept. I think of what John Powell from Berkeley was talking about in terms of othering and belonging. And really, these are code words for trust. We don't feel part of another unless we trust that that other is already a part of ourselves. And this is a beautiful thing to feel, that sense of connection. You can sit down on an airplane and talk to somebody and you feel like 5 minutes later, there's somebody that you've known in either this life or some past life, some part of your life. I think that's the thing that Rumi writes about when he talks about going to a new place. And who do you meet along the road but the person who is conveying that sense of yourself? They're an ambassador to your future. So with that in mind, I'd like to just to have another moment of silence as we go out into the evening and think about how the mythologium that's going to take place in a couple weeks will really enrich us for quite some time to come. It may take place there, it may take place in Vimeo, but it'll take place in the way that the community comes together. And that coming together is just a powerful way. It's like a seed that is going to yield bountiful fruits. And it's human interaction, it's trusting it. So here's my bowl. Thank you all. In gratitude, in trust, Sunil, Joanna, Stephanie, Dennis, Selina, Vanessa, and Dianne, and my good partner, Will. Thank you all. Thank you very much for being part of this.
Wonderful.
Everybody, looking forward to being a community with you all soon.
Yes, yes. Thank you all.
We'll be there.
Beautiful evening. Beautiful.